with the youngest, most daring, intrepid, gutsy, fearless host on the planet. Get ready for Jake's Takes. Here's Jake.
Welcome back! I am Jake, and this is Jake's Takes, where I get your favorite athletes and stars to open up and speak what's really on their minds. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because you won't believe the guests I have lined up. Today's guest played 15 seasons in the NHL with the Detroit Red Wings, the Hartford Whalers, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Philadelphia Flyers. He was drafted 3rd overall in the 1990 NHL draft by the Detroit Red Wings after playing 2 years with the Niagara Falls Thunders in the OHL. In 1993, with the Detroit Red Wings, he set a career high in assists and points and plus minus. He also played in the Stanley Cup Finals with the Red Wings in the 1995 season. In 1996, Detroit traded him along with Paul Coffey and a first-round pick to the Hartford Whalers in exchange for Brendan Shanahan. He became a leader on his new team when the franchise relocated and became the Carolina Hurricanes, being named team captain. 4 years later, he was traded to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange for Rod Brind'Amour. On May 5th, 2000, he scored a game-winning goal in the longest game in NHL playoff history, scoring in the 5th overtime against the Pittsburgh Penguins in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Boy, it was a beauty. In his first full season with the Flyers, he led the team in goals and tied his career high in points, and was then named captain of the Flyers. He also represented Canada several times, including the 1996 World Cup of Hockey. And at the 1998 Olympics, it's my absolute honor to welcome to Jake's Takes, the two-time NHL All-Star and massive captain, Keith Primeau. What's up, Keith? How you doing today?
That was a terrific introduction. I don't know. You're humbling me. I like it. It was well done. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good. So,
Good.
I know you're a good Toronto boy, because one of my coaches, Jim Vitale from Vital Hockey, hooked us up. Mad shout out to Jim for this. Thank you, Jim. But where are you? Where are you living nowadays? You still in Toronto?
Nope. I've been in the U.S. since I was 18 years old, and married an American girl, and had 4 kids. And so when I finished playing in Philadelphia, my wife's originally from Houston, Texas. Obviously, I'm from Toronto. She wasn't going north, and I wasn't going south. So we settled in New Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia, and now we live on the water, right on the ocean. And right now, I am in Ontario. The background, I'm at the cottage, so I'm spending a little bit of time in the cottage in Northern Ontario before heading to Montreal to see my youngest one, Caden.
Wow, a little compromise there. Not going north, not going south. I like it.
That's right.
By the way, we also had Mason Primeau run one of my team skates. He's a monster. Mason's your nephew?
He's a big boy. Yeah, that's my nephew. So he's we grow them big in the Primeau household. So Mason's taller than me now. He's probably about little over 6'6". I'm just a little over 6'5", and Mason is a large human being.
So you're still involved now with youth hockey?
So not as much. Like I said, I had my 2 youngest boys. I coached when they basically started playing when I retired in 2006. And I coached them for about 10 years before they went off and played junior hockey in the United States Hockey League, USHL, before going on to play college. So I basically now chase them around. I do have a job with the Youngstown Phantoms in the United States Hockey League right now, president of hockey operations, but it's low impact compared to what I was doing when I was coaching both boys.
Okay, Keith, you ready to talk some hockey?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it. So I got a big family with lots of siblings, and I ain't gonna lie, we fight from time to time. But you did something I never did. You actually fought your own brother in an NHL game. April 7th, 1997, you and your brothers just decided to drop the gloves for a real fight. How did it all start? And who won that fight? That's probably going to be controversial between you two.
Yeah, it's not that controversial. I beat up on him pretty good, but I wouldn't mess with him nowadays. But back then I was a few years older, a little bit stronger, not so much anymore. But it was the first time we played against each other professionally. Wayne he was just trying to make his way. He'd been called up from Rochester in the American Hockey League. We were at a game. It was a home game for Hartford. We were fighting for a playoff spot. He talked to my parents and invited them down for the game. He was going to fly them in, but they decided just to stay home. It was last minute, and they just going to watch on the satellite dish. And it was towards the end of the second period, and we were down, I think 2-0, and he kind of ran at our goaltender, and so all the players kind of piled at the net. They went over to the corner. And then a fight broke out on the other side of the ice, and so everybody left. And the last guy to leave our group, there's Wayne, myself, and Bob Bugner. And Bob goes, "Okay, no fighting." He looked at us and he goes, "Well, you guys are going to fight. You're brothers." And he left, and the building started chanting my name, and so I just kind of looked at Wayne and I thought, we're down 2-0. We're fighting for a playoff spot. This would be a good way to energize my team. So I asked him if he wanted to fight. Figuring he'd say no, and he says, "I don't care." So we dropped our gloves, and it was more of a noogie fest than it was a real fight. I was throwing a lot of air punches, but I did land one, and I hit him, and at that time he got mad, and he started really trying to hit me, and he threw an uppercut and just missed, and if he'd have hit me, he probably would have hurt me. So at that time I figured it was best to throw him down, and then headed off the ice right down the tunnel into the locker room, and when I hit him, I kind of knew at that moment that what I'd done was wrong. I shouldn't have, what happened shouldn't have happened. So I felt pretty bad. So I went down the tunnel, still had my equipment on because it was towards the end of the second period. Right in the locker room, went to the phone, picked up the phone. I called my parents. My dad picked up the phone, and he's laughing. And I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry. It shouldn't have happened." He goes, "It's part of the game." And in the background, I hear my mom and my sister say, It's not okay. It's not a part of the game. He's older. He knows, he should know better." And then my dad changed his tune as well. And he's like, "Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have done it." But we spoke afterwards, and we promised that it would never happen again. It was just kind of the heat of the moment.
That's amazing. So, Keith, I heard that the fans peer pressured you? Oh.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that if you want to term it. But you wouldn't remember. Your dad might remember. There's a show called A Current Affair in the U.S. at the time. It was one of those 30-minute gossip shows. They reached out to us, asked us to do an interview, and we flat out turned it down and said we're moving on.
You're just like, "Nah."
It went away.
You're like, "Nah, I'm good."
Yeah, and it went away for a few years, and then somebody decided to go and vent to YouTube, and it's probably the first question I get asked everywhere I go is, "You actually fought your brother?" And I said, "Yeah, I did."
Keith, you played on some great NHL teams and legendary franchises. The Red Wings and Flyers are epic organizations, but tell me about your time in Detroit, and what was it like playing with Steve Yzerman and Sergei Fedorov?
So I got to Detroit in 1990 as a high first-round pick and an 18-year-old, and I had another year of junior left. And to be quite honest, I wanted to go back and play my last year junior, but the management in Detroit wanted me to stay and practice on the bigger ice and work on my skating and practice with men and really get stronger. So I was in Detroit my first year, but it was a struggle. And then my second year, I thought I'd get an opportunity. I ended up getting sent to the minors for 3 months. So my first 2 years really didn't go the way I had hoped or expected, but I continued to progress. And by my fourth year, I was setting career bests and I was really starting to find a role on the team, but I wasn't really finding the happiness, that I wanted, playing the game. It was, I wasn't enjoying the game that I the way I hoped or that I wanted, even playing on a great team. And those were my own issues. As a young player, I wanted certain things and I wanted them right away. And I didn't always handle them the right way, but so I spent 6 years there. We had a lot of success. I played on a team that still holds a record for the most regular season wins in the NHL at 62. And a lot of that was because of Steve Yzerman and Sergei Fedorov. I mean, Stevie was the guy, and he was our captain, and he was a perennial 50-goal scorer at the time. And then along came Sergei Fedorov, who was putting up the same kind of numbers as Stevie was, and he was as gifted a player as I've seen. There's only a couple, there's a handful of guys that have that kind of ability. The Sergei Fedorovs, the Mario Lemieux, the Peter Forsbergs, guys who just have the blend of all of the things that you need to be, an elite player. So it was, so like I said, my time in Detroit was a little bit bittersweet. And when I moved in 1996, I was looking for the opportunity to take more of a role, more of a leadership role. And I got those on my next couple stops.
Was there any good stories that you can tell me about, you playing with Stevie?
Story with Stevie. So, he used to make fun of the way I would drop my gloves before a fight, and so he would be dancing around in practice, like imitating me and calling me on for a fight, and I'd be like, hey, listen, I don't have to protect you if you don't want it, but it was all in good fun. Stevie was always good to me. We had a good relationship. He was a pretty quiet, reserved guy, but I learned a lot from Stevie Y in the 6 years we played together.
You then played with the Hartford Whalers, and the team moved and relocated to Carolina. What was that experience like? Was it tough being a part of a team that moved to another city?
So the year I spent in Harvard was exactly what I was looking for when I moved. I felt it rejuvenated my career. I was really happy. I thought we were going to be there for at least 2 years. I bought a house. My wife and I. At the time we had 2 kids. We're expecting our third. And I thought we would be there, like I said, 2 years, maybe beyond. And after the first year, the franchise decided to move to Carolina. It's not an area of the country that I knew anything about. Other than it was a hotbed for college basketball, and it was as challenging a 2-year period as I've had in my career, not personally, but professionally, because we were living in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we were traveling 70 miles to play in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I remember a weeknight game. We were playing the Ottawa Senators at home. And we had less than 1,000 people in the building. So as a professional athlete, that's a challenging experience. But I loved the area. It's a beautiful part of the country. And it's a great place to raise your kids. My wife loved it there. But unfortunately it didn't work out there, and we were only there for a couple of years.
So talking about Carolina, I want to ask you, what do you think of their crazy celebrations?
So listen, the game transitioned coming out of the lockout in 2004, 2005, where they wanted more entertainment. They wanted more fan interaction. They wanted to bring the players closer to the fans. And so you can't have it one way and not the other way. And so as a hockey traditionalist, it's not something that I particularly care for, but at the end of I also saw it as, hey, this is what they're asking for, and so they're well within their right to express the way they want to when they win a hockey game, and that's what they were doing. And so I because of that, I had no problem with it.
So since you got some experience playing on a new franchise, how do you think Seattle would do this year in their inaugural season? By the way, I hope people don't expect them to do what Vegas did. I mean, Vegas did something insane.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think they went about the selection of their team a little differently than Vegas. I don't know if you could look at Seattle, and I could be wrong, but and say that they're Stanley Cup contenders. I don't think we would have said that about Vegas either, but we also saw the personnel that they had and the team they put together, and weren't surprised that they were in the finals. I think the way they were playing their first year, they had high expectations. But Seattle, I think, is going to have a couple road bumps, but they're coming into the league in a flat salary cap, and there's some different challenges that they're facing than what Vegas did. Expansion was just a few years ago, so it's all fresh in the minds of all the other teams. How Vegas kind of took advantage of them, and so Seattle wasn't going to get those same type of benefits, and so I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Okay, shifting to the Philadelphia Flyers. Let's talk about your epic overtime goal in the playoffs. When you scored with 7 minutes and 59 seconds left in the 5th overtime on May 4, 2000. It gave the Flyers an epic 2-1 win over Pittsburgh, tying the series at 2 games each. And then you advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, winning the next 2 games. My dad showed me the clips from that game. How did you have the energy to do what you pulled off? It was such a gorgeous goal.
It's interesting because, playoff hockey, it tightens up. There's a lot more clutching and grabbing, and certainly back 20 years ago, that was the case. But 8 periods in, defensemen started to get tired and fatigue. So there was a lot more open ice. I missed most of that year. That was a year I held out in Carolina, got moved in January, got hurt, missed another 6 weeks. So I was really, really fresh. And other than, after 20 or 30 seconds, you really felt the lactic acid in your legs. I felt really good. And so on that particular play, I just come off the bench. Defenseman was Darius Kasparaitis. I'd taken him wide a couple other times, same way, the exact same play earlier in the game. One of them, he met me at the post. Another time, I went behind the net. But I'd gone wide on him. So on this play, I opened up like I was going to go wide. As soon as he crossed over, I brought the puck back to the middle of the ice. I was able to get a shot off, and I still attest to the fact I don't think it was a great shot. Hit, when you look at it, it hit the middle bar. So it wasn't like it was in the corner, although it goes over Ron Tugnot's shoulder. But it was a very memorable game for me, very memorable moment in my career, and I knew that at the time. I knew all it did was get us back in the series to tie it 2-2, but I just kind of felt that because of the length of the game, that more years that went by, the bigger life it was going to take on.
Can I ask you a question about the current day Flyers?
Sure.
Okay, so I want to ask you about Sean Couturier. I mean, he just got an 8-year, $62 million deal. I mean, I know he had a good season last year, but is he worth all that money?
So it's interesting with the way money is nowadays. I mean, I find there's lots of average guys that make $5, $6, and $7 million. Now compared to we had to fight for $3, $4, $5 million. Back 20 years ago. But I do know that Sean Couturier is a very important part of that Flyers team and that locker room, and so he's not he's not going to mesmerize you by the number of points he puts up necessarily, but you're going to appreciate what he does in the details part of the game. He's going to win faceoffs, kill penalties. He's a guy on the ice in the last minute of the game, first shift of the game, power play, penalty kill. So he's an important guy. And when you evaluate your team and you place value on guys, you do it based on that criteria, and that's why he's making almost $8 million a year.
Okay, I can hear that. Keith, you had the huge honor to represent Canada several times. In 1998, Canada suffered a shocking loss to Czech Republic, and the team was stacked. Up front, they had you, Gretzky, Eric Lindros, Fleury, Shanahan, Yzerman, Joe Sakic, and so many others. But then came the shootout, and for some reason, Coach Crawford decided to leave Gretzky on the bench, and he didn't get the chance to shoot. Can you please explain to me what you were all thinking when you saw that Wayne wasn't going to get a chance to shoot?
It was even before that moment. It was disappointing to know that we had the best team there. We got up against a hot goaltender in Dominic Hasek, and then playing a 10-minute overtime period and then a shootout was really deflating for those of us who weren't going to get a chance in the shootout, but who laid everything out there and now had no control over the outcome of the game, and that was tough. That was really tough to swallow. I got to think that the Gretzky situation was one that was predetermined. Somehow I feel that maybe there was conversations prior that he wasn't going to be a shooter, maybe by his own request or some other conversation. I don't know, because it just doesn't make sense to anyone as to why you wouldn't have the greatest player of all time taking a shootout, a penalty shootout in a shootout situation for an opportunity to play for the gold medal. So it still boggles the mind, almost 25 years later.
So did Coach Crawford ever explain to you guys after the game why he didn't call Gretzky?
Not to us personally, but I think the explanation was that the ice was bad at the time. They don't clean the ice like they do now through the middle, before an overtime, before a shootout, and so the ice conditions weren't the best, and they felt that they had a better chance using a guy like Ray Bourque, who had a harder, heavier shot, and would have to muscle through the snow than to use a skilled finesse guy like Gretzky, who was going to try and beat the goalie with a move that may not come to fruition because of the ice conditions. That was the only real explanation that we got, if there was any explanation at all.
So you've been a captain before, so you understand and appreciate the rule. But what do you make of Gretzky not being named captain of that Olympic team? And they gave the C to Lindros instead.
Yeah, another one that for me was I felt like they rushed that. They wanted to pass the torch to Eric. It was an up and coming young player. He was 20. I guess then I would have been 27. He wasn't that young. I guess he'd probably be 20, 25, 26. But they felt that that he was going to be the face of Hockey Canada for the next 10, 12 years, and so they were going to pass the torch, and felt that this was the opportunity to pass the torch. Probably not the move I would have made if I was the coach or general manager of that team, based on the personalities that were in the locker room. I think even if you weren't going to give it to Gretzky, there's lots of other capable older statesmen that could have been captains. Scott Stevens, Ray Bourque, Steve Yzerman. There's Joe Sakic. There's lots of guys there that could have been the captain. There's a lot of captains on that team.
Keith, who was the best player you ever played with?
The best player I ever played with, from a skill perspective, it would probably be Sergei Fedorov. I think when I got to play with Peter Forsberg, he was a little banged up. He was a little bit injury prone at the time. But I just remember how great he was and the things he could do on the ice. But for me, the greatest player that I ever played against was Mario Lemieux. I mean, the things that I saw, him do as a big man with soft hands and high-end skill are things I don't know if we'll ever see a player as dynamic as that again.
Keith, I gotta thank you for joining me today. It was a really huge honor to have a chance to talk with such a great Canadian hockey player. Did you enjoy our time together?
It was awesome. I appreciate the time, Jake.
Thanks again, and I'll tell Coach Jim Vitale that you send some regards.